The crowd gasped. In the middle of a grand ballroom filled with flowers, chandeliers, and the world's most powerful elites, a woman stood trembling in silence. Her silk gown, once a symbol of dignity, lay torn at her feet. She was barefoot, her swollen belly exposed to the whispers of onlookers. Across from her, dressed in a flawless white suit, stood the man she had once trusted with her life, a billionaire whose empire was built on greed, pride, and betrayal. But the worst cut wasn't his cruelty. It was that tonight, in front of hundreds of guests, he had stripped his pregnant wife bare so he could crown another woman, his mistress, as the bride. And in the shadows, with fury boiling behind his weathered face, her father, the sheriff of the town, watched his daughter's dignity torn apart, vowing that this injustice would not end without consequence. If you believe that kindness, respect, and second chances still matter in a world that often feels cold, I invite you now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Royal Stories. Your support helps us bring such unforgettable stories of heartbreak, resilience, and redemption to light. Her name was Clara. At just 24, she had married Henry Colton, a man nearly 15 years older than her, whose wealth had dazzled not only her but also her struggling family. Henry had promised her the world, security, love, and a future where her dreams would bloom alongside his empire. But promises from men like Henry are fragile glass. They shine beautifully under the lights but shatter easily when reality comes. Clara's heart had been naive, filled with hope, and when she found out she was carrying his child, she thought her joy had reached its peak. She didn't know then that Henry's love was shallow, conditional, and laced with poison. Henry had always been admired for his charm in public. Reporters adored his confidence, businessmen admired his ruthless strategies, and women whispered about his charisma. But behind closed doors, Clara had seen a different man, controlling, dismissive, and quick to humiliate. At first, she dismissed the signs as stress, as the burden of his empire weighing heavily on him. But as her pregnancy advanced, his cruelty sharpened. He sneered at her swollen figure, called her a burden, and spent more nights away than with her. Rumors began to reach her ears, whispers of a younger woman, glamorous and bold, who had caught Henry's wandering eye. Clara prayed they were false, but the truth was far worse than she imagined. The wedding was Henry's ultimate betrayal. He orchestrated it with a level of arrogance only money could buy. In his twisted logic, Clara was no longer worthy to stand beside him. She was too plain, too used, too inconvenient in her pregnant state. And so, he humiliated her publicly, making her attend the very ceremony where he declared another woman as his true bride. His mistress, Vanessa, was a vision of vanity, a tall, raven-haired beauty draped in diamonds, smirking as Clara stood broken. And when Henry tore the veil from Clara's head and stripped the last layers of her gown, laughter rippled among the cruel-hearted guests, while Clara's father, Sheriff Walter Hayes, clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. Walter had always been a man of justice, respected and feared in equal measure. But in that moment, he wasn't a sheriff. He was a father watching his little girl, whom he had once carried on his shoulders and protected from every childhood nightmare, be humiliated in front of the world. The weight of his badge could not compare to the rage in his heart. Yet he stayed silent, for Clara's sake, because if he caused a scene now, Henry's empire and influence could crush them both further. Instead, he placed a steadying hand on his holster and whispered to himself that this story wasn't ending here. Clara left the ballroom that night barefoot, clutching her belly, tears streaking down her face. She had nothing. Her dignity shredded, her marriage destroyed, her reputation smeared by whispers of being the discarded wife. But the child within her gave her strength she didn't know she had. She would not break, not for Henry, not for Vanessa, not for anyone. With her father's quiet support, she rebuilt her life piece by piece. The sheriff gave her a small cabin outside town, where she could live quietly, away from the prying eyes of gossip. It was not easy. She worked with trembling hands, sewing clothes to make ends meet, her body aching from pregnancy yet her spirit unwilling to bow. When her son was born, she named him Matthew, a gift from God. Holding him in her arms for the first time gave her a purpose so powerful it eclipsed every scar Henry had left. Matthew's laughter became her healing, his small fingers clutching hers reminded her that love, real love, was still alive. She dedicated herself to raising him, to proving that even when stripped of everything, a woman could rise stronger than before. Meanwhile, Henry's empire began to crack. Vanessa, the woman he had chosen over Clara, was ambitious but heartless. She cared little for his childless future, spending his money recklessly, betraying him with the same ease he once betrayed Clara. Business partners grew wary of his scandals. Lawsuits piled. For every cruel decision he made, consequences returned like shadows at his door. And then came the night when Walter, still sheriff, received the call. Henry had been arrested for fraud, corruption, and embezzlement. The same arrogance that had led him to humiliate Clara had blinded him to the law's reach. Clara did not attend the trial. She had no interest in seeing his downfall, no satisfaction in his misery. Her victory was quieter, more sacred, raising Matthew into a kind, strong young man who looked at his mother with pride. But Walter sat in the courtroom, his steely eyes locked on Henry as the judge read the sentence. Justice was slow, but it had arrived. Years later, Clara stood outside her cabin as the sun dipped behind the hills. Matthew, now a bright boy of 6, played in the yard with a wooden toy his grandfather had carved. Walter sat nearby, his weathered hands steady as he watched his daughter smile again. Clara had scars, emotional ones that may never fully fade, but she had built a life far richer than Henry's crumbling empire. And in that golden light, she whispered to herself, "He stripped me that night, but he couldn't strip my soul." If this story touched your heart, if Clara's journey from humiliation to resilience moved you even in the smallest way, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Royal Stories. Every engagement helps us bring more powerful and emotional stories to you. Special request to comment. Tell us in the comments, what was the most powerful moment in this story for you?